Good evening, Hopkins pre-health community and all that jazz. I'm Ms. Zoriel Botto, one of the assistant directors from the Office of Pre-Professional Programs and Advising, and we have another Pre-Prof talks this evening, and I am going to bring on our guest, which is an alum. Oh, I see you. Okay, here we go. Yay. In just a second. Oh, I don't know what just happened, except, okay, nice. There we are. Hello, how are you?
Hey, doing good. How about yourself?
Great, great. Great to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, so thank you for agreeing to do this very random situation with Pre-Prof. We just started this semester because we realized that students like to get information in different formats, and so we figured that more of like a casual conversation around important topics of being a ready pre-health, pre-med student is a great way to have it just on the Instagram live. So we appreciate your time this evening.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So first, introduce yourself. Let the people know what year you graduated. Also, what was your major in undergrad and what you're doing now, and then we'll kind of like filter back in and fill in some holes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey everyone, pleasure to be here, and thanks, Zuri, for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Arman. I came to Hopkins from Kenya, so I grew up in a small city called Mombasa on the coast of Kenya. I came here in 2019, finished my undergrad in 3 years, and graduated with a degree in molecular and cellular biology. And I'm currently in my bridge year, I guess, between now and grad school, medical school.
Mm-hmm.
Big thing.
Okay, awesome. What are you doing in your bridge year?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk a lot about that. So I have a full-time position over at the School of Medicine, working in the Antar Lab, where I serve as the senior research program coordinator, leading a clinical research study looking at the symptoms and biomarkers of long COVID in people with HIV. So my role, leading the study involves consenting patients, doing study events with them, managing lots of the study events and logistics, managing the IRB.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like my main 9 to 5 job. And then I also have a part-time job over at Stanford Medical School, where I serve as a research program administrator. So my role there involves building programs, working on research collaborations, and also mentoring students with their research projects as well.
Nice. Okay, so you're busy. You are definitely full-time and part-time position. That's great. So today is like Pre-Prof Talks is around experiences in bridge years, and that's why I wanted you to kind of orient. Obviously, a lot of students from Hopkins have a high interest in research. That's usually why they even choose Hopkins to begin with, right? And so the opportunities are obviously available while you're in undergrad, but the opportunity to continue and doing it in your bridge year as a way to facilitate your medical school goals is obviously another way of doing it. So I guess let's kind of talk about experiences that you had in undergrad as it relates to your overall like portfolio. What are some of the things that you did in like community service, as well as leadership, even some clinical experiences that you had in undergrad, things that particularly you can talk about and highlight the ones you found extremely valuable to, your overall experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think some of the main experiences I think that have been impactful for me, I think at the top of the list, it would probably be working as a patient advocate over at Hopkins Community Connection.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked as a patient advocate at the Harriet Lane Clinic. And for individuals who don't know, the Hopkins Community Connection program is a program that addresses the social determinants of health with patients. So patient advocates like myself get attached to about a patient load of about 10 to 15 every semester, and we help them addressing their needs, such as finding housing, applying for insurance, working with their children on finding education. So addressing those kind of needs. And so I think that allowed me to develop long-term relationships with patients and really understand what challenges patients go through in the US medical system that are not really related to being in the clinic.
Mm.
And that kind of oriented me to those aspects and kind of made me want to, have a career in that field. So I would say that would probably be my most valuable experience in the clinical setting. I also volunteered as a child life volunteer in the Bloomberg Children's Center. So,
Okay.
and I still do that till now. Once a week I'll go and be a child again and play
Right.
video games with children, and that's also helped me with my empathetic listening skills and given me the opportunity to work with kids, which is something I want to do later in life. And I would say, in terms of leadership, I came, to Hopkins freshman year, going around to CIF Fair, and I started educating myself about, what the medical field here looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, there are large health disparities. And, I started learning about underrepresented communities and how being underrepresented in medicine, there is a big issue with that. And so I got involved with the Student National Medical Association here at Hopkins. I joined in freshman year as a member, and then ended up becoming finance rep, and then ended up becoming the president of the society. And so I think, and until now, I have continued some of that experiences on a national scale through some of the Student National Medical Association national
Okay.
program.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I keep myself a bit too busy, but being in those leadership positions has educated me tremendously about the medical field, as well as learning people skills, how to work with people, how to lead a club, how to
Right.
fundraise, how to set agendas. And I think that's really important for whatever career that you want to go into. How to manage situations. I think that's something that has, really educated me on that. But I would say, out of all the experiences that I have, the most impactful, and I think it kind of goes into my role now working at Stanford, is the summer of 2021.
Okay.
I did a summer program that was between my sophomore and my
Yeah.
junior/senior year, I guess. And I took part in a summer program over at the Center for Asian Health Research and Education. And the program was designed around building the next generation of leaders in global health through a precision medicine lens. So in the program, we were put into groups of 3 students. So 2 of my teammates were from other universities in the US. We worked on 2 research projects, which we have actually taken from designing the research question through to publication.
Wow.
And during the program, I received training in epidemiology and public health research skills, as well as getting mentorship and going to several seminars from Stanford faculty. And that's been, I think, the most transformative to me, because right after that, I got employed by the program to actually build the summer program for the next year's cohort and be a mentor in the program. So when I was a student, each team got a mentor that was usually doctoral level, and they would kind of guide you with your research projects and provide mentorship and support. And I kind of took over that role for the following year, and that's what I've been doing. So I think, and that's opened so many doors for me in terms of finding mentors, faculty to work with, and several research collaborations. So I think, to me, that's been the most impactful, because I've I developed so many skills through that program and beyond, I would say.
Yes. So a lot of what you ended up doing in your bridge year, from my understanding, had a lot to do with kind of the places that you spent your time in undergrad, like just in terms of just working the ground level, learning and doing. But then that allowed, your space to trust you with more responsibility, give you more autonomy in your role to kind of grow and things like that. So I guess what we, of course, as advisors always want to do is to show students that there's so many ways to essentially navigate the route to medicine, right? And so even though we have these like very broad columns of clinical experiences and community service, right, it doesn't need to look the same for everyone. And so I guess when you think about your portfolio and the kind of applicant that you're trying to make yourself for pursuing medical school, is there anything that you look at now that you wished you had done maybe a little bit more of when you were in undergrad? You know, not to say like, you know, there's hindsight is always 2020, right? But I think it's more like, you know, man, I wish I could have like maybe did a little bit more of that. And you think it would have given you another vantage point or just improved your experience as you persist to medical
You
school?
know, I think that's such a great question, and I didn't realize this till, you know, towards the end of graduation, towards graduation, sorry. And so, you know, when I joined the program at Stanford, you know, during the summer of 2021, it was like a seed was planted in my brain of like, ooh, public health is
Yeah.
cool. And so I got formal training in epidemiology research and, you know, quantitative methods, and I think I started liking that a lot. And now I see myself kind of morphing my career to include an aspect of public health. If that's through additional training by an MPH or a PhD,
Mm-hmm.
something I want to pursue 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking back, when I came to Hopkins, I had this fixed mindset of I want to do medicine, and I went straight through. I didn't take many classes outside of my major. You know, I did take the required ones and a couple others that I was interested
Right.
in. I didn't take all classes, so I didn't receive any formal training.
Mm.
And so looking back, I think I should have done that. I should have explored more in the public health route. I think maybe I could have joined a couple more clubs, especially with like health policy or, you know, public health related, so that I could have educated myself a lot more earlier on. Because
Yeah.
now getting on into my gap year, I feel like I've learned so much about public health and clinical research that I want to pursue that as a career
Nice.
in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if I was exposed to that earlier on, I would have had a clearer picture in my mind of what I wanted to do from, you know, early on. So I would say that would be something I wish I did, was, you know, put my feet in the water more in the public health field.
In the public health field. And you know, and I think that's, even though it's a an area where you wish you had more of, at least you were reassured about your interest through activity, right? Through extracurricular. And a lot of times you can gain a lot of knowledge just by doing, right? And being in the spaces where you're challenged, like those programs that you do in the summer. Even if you don't take a formal class, a lot of times you're able to like really like enhance your experience. So I think there's like a question. Okay, no, never mind. All right, I was just trying to make sure. If anybody has any questions for Armand, please do put it in the chat. By no means, this is also totally an opportunity to ask questions. uh, I love it. You got somebody that's in here just bigging you up. Okay, so definitely don't want to draw out the session, but then like a lot of times students are resistant to taking a gap year. Like here, we always say 90% of our Hopkins students, over 90%, are taking a gap year, meaning they're not applying until their senior year. And so even though it feels like a very gap year, I would say it's kind of normal-ish because you're not, you know, applying in your junior year. But what led you to make that decision for yourself and say, I want to use this time to do?
Oh, that's a great question. And so I think the simple answer is, or the obvious answer is, I finished my undergrad a year early, so I was going to take a gap year anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, when I think about that on a deeper level, I feel like you know, because I did my undergrad in 3 years, I kind of rushed and I took classes and I was super burnt out at the end. And thinking back, I didn't take time to reflect on why I was doing the things I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have like a clear picture in my mind of why I wanted to go into medicine or why I wanted to do X, Y, Z. And so I wanted to take time off between undergrad and the next step to actually sit down and figure out like these are the things that I've done, this is what I'm interested in, and what can I do to kind of put that in my career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the biggest thing is I wanted time to reflect on what I've done. And I think, in all honesty, I think being on a gap year now for several months has allowed me so much time to do that. I go to work, I come home, I have time towards myself. It's a bit difficult to do that, when you're an undergrad.
Yeah.
And I think I've had the time to do that. I've also had the time to explore my interests. I spend time with my friends and my family when they're around. I do the things that I love. I go out on the weekends with my folks, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I wanted that kind of break because I particularly found undergrad at Hopkins, a bit difficult. So um, I wanted that kind of bridge and not to be in school pretty much, you know, jumping out of school and going into another program right away.
School. Yeah, that burnout is real. A lot of people don't talk about the fact that they get into medical school and then some people take leaves of absence for a portion of time because it is a long time. If you think about it, if you go straight through from like K through 12, from primary school and then coming to secondary and then doing college, you literally have been in school all your life without a break, and so like you said, it's an opportunity to mature. I think there's parts of adulting that come that you can only get by like just hitting the ground running with some real life challenges, right? And then there's also the time to just give yourself the permission to step away from it so that you can go into the next step with more energy and focus. So I guess as you kind of talked about like what you wish you did, but I'm sure, like you said, you mentor other students in other spaces as they work on projects, and I'm sure you have other conversations with your peers and maybe those that are also interested in medicine. But do you have any words of advice for people who are still in their space of like, especially our freshmen, sophomore, juniors who are still in the waters of navigating, finding their why, and also trying to choose specific activities and fulfill, because we don't want you to be in like the check box, like, oh, I have to do this, but there are boxes that need to be checked, right? So it's like this weird conundrum. But is there anything that you would say to them as they, find themselves in their why more deeply, that you think has been helpful for really securing that for you?
I think I think I have two pieces of advice that I want to give. And so the first one is in whatever trajectory that you want to go into, whatever path you want to go into, I would consider it being a marathon, not a sprint. I know it's a bit of a cliche saying,
Mm-hmm.
but when we there is always this push of I want to finish as fast as I can, and sometimes you can kind of get burnt out, especially now. The majority of people take gap years, and it's becoming even more difficult to become a competitive applicant, and so that puts undue pressure on you to kind of do things as fast as you can and kind of check all the boxes. But what I would do is kind of sit back and really spread out and take your time, because at the end of the day, you're not competing with everybody else. You're competing against yourself to make yourself a better person, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I honestly think that you should think about whatever career you're going to as a marathon and take your time. There's no harm with taking a gap year or two, or taking some time off between now and the next big step, with pursuing your passions, because I think that's what's important.
Yeah.
So I would say that's like my biggest piece of advice. And the second thing, which is what a lot of my friends are facing now with applying to medical school, is I think you should do things that you're passionate about. Like, there's no harm in trying, lots of different things to figure out what your passion is,
Mm-hmm.
what your passions are. But I think the ones that you do stick with, do stuff that you're passionate about, because otherwise you're not going to enjoy it. Undergrad is a time to enjoy. I mean, you go undergrad once, right? And medical school is even more tough, or grad school is even more tough. And life becomes really real after, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
have a full job and are trying to earn a living and, you know, go on further with your career. So what
Mm-hmm.
I would say is, do things that you're passionate about, do things that you love, and have a good time. Because when the time does come to apply, you could have done like 1,000 different things, but if you don't know how to convey your message and convey how passionate you are about things, that will kind of make you not be a good
A good
applicant anyway.
applicant. Right, right, right. It's not just about getting it done, it's about getting it done
Right.
well and also making sure you can communicate it. Yeah, that's really great advice. We say a lot of things, but I think the nice thing about having alumni on, especially in these spaces, is because we're advisors. We're supposed to say it, right? But it's good to have students. And I promise I didn't put him up to this. This is his own. We didn't prep, like, besides saying this is what the topic is. So the thought and authenticity that you offer today and just the insight of your own experiences, I'm sure will be valuable to many students who review this live and listen in. We appreciate your time for giving your story and also giving some tips, so that people can navigate their own spaces, more uniquely to them. So we won't hold you anymore. We really, really appreciate it. For those that are, I know a lot of students come on here and check us out. If you are confused or at any point feeling like you're kind of stuck and don't know what to do, that's what we are here for. Please do make an appointment with the Pre-Prof office through the handshake. And if you are not a Hopkins student and you just happen to be here, you should find someone to support you at your institution, and we feel free to watch these as needed. But we appreciate you again, Armand. Thank you for coming out on
No,
here.
of course. Pleasure to be here. And I guess to everyone watching, feel free to reach out if you ever need advice or need help with anything. I'm more than happy to support in any way that I can.
We gladly appreciate it. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.